Okay, it's
Dave.
6 p.m. on November 18th. Going to call the Park Board meeting to order. Mary? Pledge allegiance. Okay, everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from last meeting? Any changes need to be made? Okay, Chair will accept a motion to approve the approve the minutes from last meeting. Rusty first and Patty second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Nothing for president's communication, and then personal appearances. Is this Ryan and Hank? Okay.
Righty. Thank you, President, and everybody for having me here this evening. I don't know if you all remember, I was here, I don't know, I feel like it was cold out again when we were talking about the survey when we were first getting it off the ground. And then we designed it with Confluence in the city, and we were able to get it up off the ground and administered, and now we're here today. So I think you've had the report. Hopefully the board has seen the report by now. I figured Brian and I played a little bit of date tag in terms of are you available or are you not, and so I'm happy to be here finally this evening. And one of the things that I like doing first is getting my presentation going. There we go. And you all are familiar with ETC Institute. We're based in Olathe. We've been there about 40 years. I've been there about 20 of them. Started way back when phone calling was still working. But when I get to present the results, it gives me a unique opportunity to give you my perspective. And so each one of us probably had a unique reason why we were doing the survey. We thought about that reason and what the results were going to mean. And what I want to do is kind of reframe that whole situation into what the consultant saw. And so I am here to design a best practices survey with you all. I'm here to ensure statistical validity in the sampling and ensure demographic and geographic representation of your results, which we were able to achieve. But I like to give you that kind of framework because this is still one engagement puzzle piece that Hank and Confluence and the whole city's putting together. This wasn't the end-all be-all of the decision-making process, and these results are being used with everything else that you've learned over the last few months to help make decisions. And so this is an objective assessment. We want to provide comparisons to national and regional results. We want to provide a reliable data set for which to make some decisions based off of, and we want to develop priorities ratings analysis. And so if you remember the report, some of the major analysis types was a priority and investment ratings question, and that was that big do you have a need type question, and which one of those items are most important, and I'll walk us through that analysis a little bit today as well. And then we also had service level priorities. So not only did we look closely at programming and facility types, we also looked at, maintenance of parks, trail upkeep, and those types of things that just help keep our system nice and really are promoted or really pushed in our perspective to promote overall satisfaction or push overall satisfaction upwards with those services. When we first get into this, it's always important for me to kind of go through the methodology. We had that initial meeting where we discussed this, but it turned out to be a 6-page survey. We mailed that survey to a random sample of households, collected from that random sample a total of 431 completed surveys. I probably mentioned this when we initially did this, but I typically have to go slightly over my goal of 400, either because response rates are high or because I need to make sure I'm balancing those demographic and sometimes geographic features where we'll just have to hit a couple of neighborhoods. But we were able to achieve those surveys. We administered that survey between July and September is when the report was delivered, and they give us a margin of error of about 5%. So anytime you're looking at a response type or any comparison to national or regional numbers, what we're really looking for is 5% differences to tell us, hey, that's pretty significant. And what that also means is if we were to do 431 completed surveys to a random sample of addresses within the city, 95 out of 100 times we should get these same results. So if we asked, do you like blue, yes or no, and it was 50-50 in our survey, it could be as high as 55% or as low as 45%. Any given instance, 95 out of 100 times. Because it is statistics, there are 5 times that it could escape our margin of error, but it's reliability, and we want to make sure that we're forthcoming and transparent in the way that we're presenting the results. Very statistically reliable to the 95% level of confidence. We have a margin of error of about 5%. That takes us to our overall findings. And what I want everybody to know here is that you're not really a typical system. You have extremely high usage and overall really high satisfaction. 84% of your respondents indicated they'd visited one of your facilities, which is much higher than our national average. Not quite to that level of being, completely wow, significant, not that 5% edge, but 3 percentage points difference is a pretty large gap. When we talk about participation in programs, 10 percentage points above that national average, that's a significant jump. So your active participation in programming or special events and things like that in the community is exceptionally high. And then we talk about overall value received for the quality of services. That includes pretty much everything. It's kind of a objective, a perceptions related question. How do you feel about the value that you're receiving? Almost 3/4, 73% of folks indicated they're either very satisfied or satisfied with what's offered. So overall, system is really healthy. Folks are generally satisfied with the value they're receiving, and they're utilizing it to an extent that's a little bit higher than what we would see in other organizations. I know this list is really tough to read. These are our high priorities from that priority investment ratings. We're going to go back through these, but what I wanted to mention first is that in the facilities and amenities, first couple of things we see are paved walking or connectivity trails. That's huge in most communities. We also see natural areas and conservation areas, which plays really nicely with our top program priority, which is nature programs and environmental education. So that tells us as consultants that respondents were pretty thoughtful when they completed this thing. You could really cruise through a survey like this in about 10 minutes, and we look at our online administration time to get a feel for that, and you could tell that folks spent some time in the survey, really thoughtfully completed their responses. And when we talk about overall usage of the system, I'll reiterate some of those things that we just went over, but most respondents are really satisfied with the overall value they receive. The reason I wanted to show this chart is that almost that other 25% of folks are just in that neutral category. So when we talk about overall value, we're talking really high satisfaction numbers. Neutral numbers are usually from those folks in that value proposition statement where, hey, I can't tell you if it's a good or bad value, but generally I feel pretty good about things. It's kind of a passing or an okay grade. And that's compared to only 12% of respondents who said any kind of dissatisfied response. We talk about overall which organizations are most used. Respondents to a large degree are relying on the city of Belton to provide those recreation services. We do have some nearby communities, the county, churches or other religious organizations, a couple of private providers, and then all the way down to just kind of a decimal point in terms of that elite fitness. But we were able to track most of those providers in the community or in the nearby or adjacent communities. It became clear very quickly that folks do depend on the city for their recreation needs. When we asked that respondent question, yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I got a question on the previous slide. On the programs, household use for recreation programs for City of Belton, and then it says neighboring cities, Cass. Does it get even more specific? I can't remember as to what they're using.
We do get a little bit in this slide. We ask, what are you doing at those facilities, or what are you doing when you visit parks and recreation facilities or parks? And so we find that most of it's walking or swimming. And so the vast majority of those use types, we see relaxing and enjoying nature, which again, back to our priority investment ratings, those nature, outdoor nature centers, education centers, right up there with some of those common use types. Fitness and exercise and playgrounds kind of top the list of those top 4 or 5 there. And then outdoor adventures is up there as well, which I think is again in the eye of the beholder, but something we saw in our priority investment ratings. Both the programming and the facility types kind of blend into that particular use type pretty well. But again, that's why you have Confluence, other consultants, other people on the ground in the community, you all, to help kind of guide that conversation as to how do we interpret what outdoor adventure really truly means. So we get all the way down to the bottom, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. When we talk about some of these items like tennis, pickleball, gardening, canoe, kayaking, it's not that those services aren't needed in the community. It's not that we should rip those facility or amenity types out. It's just that they're used by a smaller group of people. Then when we get to the top, you see kind of regardless of age or ability, you'll be able to use a walking trail. You're able to go walking from 5 to 55 or even 85. So, and then out to the right there, we asked those respondents who indicated that they'd visited one of the facilities, the overall quality. We can see about 81% in that excellent and good sum there. A good group in the about 20% in fair and 1% in the poor rating. So most of the folks that indicated they'd visited, we asked them their rating, very positive on that as well. We asked in question 2C, now kind of bringing everybody back into the fold, the users and the non-users. What are those barriers to use? Most of our households are using. We should really take this with a grain of salt, understanding 8 out of 10 or almost 9 out of 10 respondents have used or visited a park or facility, but there do seem to be some barriers with those facility or place types that might have a fee associated or an entry fee associated with their use. And that really seems to be the only major barrier. A barrier of using other local providers is not really a barrier to using your system. It's just currently what they're doing. The lack of features they want to use is something that surveys do a really good job of tackling. But again, you've hired a fantastic local consultant who can help consult you on which one of those local features might be missing in the system. We get down to the bottom, and again, I want to point out lack of restrooms. Restrooms tend to be a high priority item in high performing systems. Seems like you've already kind of tackled that particular issue in most of your places. And then we asked again, kind of following up on the program usage, about half of folks indicated they'd used one of a program activity or participated in an event offered by the city. Most of the reasons why is program location, dates program are offered, friends participating in time, kind of list. Quality of the instructors and coaches, not necessarily a reason why they're participating, but we would probably see that rearing its head someplace else if it was a problem. So I don't think it's a barrier, but I don't think it, nobody's coming just for the quality of the instruction, but it doesn't seem like it's a problem, because when we look at those folks, again, when we ask to rate the quality of those items that they participated in, even a larger share, about 87%, giving that good, excellent rating there. We asked about indoor or outdoor aquatic facilities. Again, fewer respondents, about 1 in 3 indicated they'd visited one of those types of facilities. Most in the indoor category for the most part, which makes sense. I've also visited your indoor aquatic facility numerous times for birthday parties. And when you kind of group that up, most folks, about 71% have used, or a little over 74% have used indoor facilities combined. And then in 4C, we did ask just specifically, I think this was a specific kind of question that we wanted to ask in the survey. It's an excellent opportunity to get some good feedback. Most folks, about 76%, are just right around there saying, hey, you're either completely or mostly meeting my needs. About 1 in 5, again, in that fair category or that somewhat meeting my needs, and 3% saying no. Please.
Sometimes I wish these would go a little bit more specific, because 21% partly meets our needs. What was that, like probably the splash pad, maybe? I don't know. But that just seems like a high number. That it's all relative, I get it, but 21%.
And we see, President, in the priority investment ratings, we'll see indoor facility, indoor swimming use is one of those common or one of those higher priority items. And so folks are kind of probably just looking for more. And that's what we find in communities that do have aquatics. It's more and more and more. When we get up to the northern communities, Idaho, Utah, Montana, it's ice sheets. We need more and more ice sheets. And so we do frequently see that. And I think one of the air quote problems that Belton has is you have a really quality facility and people are trying to get in. And so there's a little bit of supply and demand most likely going on there as well. But we'll see in the priority investment ratings that aquatics still is a really popular feature, something folks are really looking for. And we asked why we haven't visited aquatic facilities more often. It's just that folks are too busy. Not a lot of barriers there. Some with the too expensive, some doesn't offer the amenities I prefer. But really not a lot of barriers to that aquatic facility usage, even though usage is a little bit lower at about 3 in 1. And most respondents, about 2/3, indicated they had a park within a 10-minute walk of their home. And that's one of those CAPRA accreditation type questions that we want to make sure we're asking. So vast majority of folks believe that they have that park. When we talk about priority investment ratings, I've been alluding to it the entire time. I'll take us through it about 4 slides at a time. We asked first respondents to basically just assess how well their needs are being met. It was a 4-point scale with out to the right. If you didn't have a need for one of the facility or amenity types, you were asked to circle no need. Based on the percentage of respondents that circled no need, we were able to calculate what percentage approximately of the respondents in the survey have a need for each one of the facility amenity types listed. As we see towards the top, a lot of that, again, is regardless of age or ability. We could be using or participating in those types of activities. When we get towards the bottom, it's a little bit more specialized. Motorized boats, esports, non-motorized boat launches, just a little bit more unique or special use types. Again, not that we should not offer those or consider those in the future, just fewer households absolutely or actually have a need for that. We then exclude the no need responses and we calculate the level of need for each one of those items based there. Something happened with my formatting there, and a couple of the items look like they're not in the right spot. But one of the things that I always try to do here is I'm going to take large community parks up here at the top. And it's about 70% of respondents indicated fully or mostly met for that particular item. But that's only 70% of folks of the 80% who responded that they had a need. And so I just like to call out that distinction that we're beginning to tease folks out in this particular chart. And even though outdoor or motorized boat launches down here has a high level of not need not being met, excuse me, it's 56% of 20% of the overall population. So it's just a smaller proportion, and we factor that into the analysis. And the follow-up question in question 9, out of that large list of amenity facility types, respondents were then asked to force rank their top 4. And this gives us an opportunity to really determine, if you had to choose, if push comes to shove, which of those items is most important to your household. We can get a really good ascending list this way. And again, we see some of those most common facility types that most households could have a need or a use for at the top. And what we do is we basically weight the results. So it's kind of a sliding grade scale. And what we do is, based on the item that received the highest level of importance and the highest level of unmet need in the previous chart, we'll add those 2 ratings together and create our priority investment ratings, which balances now both the level of need, how many community households basically have a need for that item, how well that need's being met, as well as the importance. We already saw this list of the red items, but I like to start at the green when we get to this slide to again recommend we do not need to rip up our diamond sports fields or our disc golf courses or extreme sports items within the community. We're serving those needs pretty well. That's why those needs are lower on the priorities list. As we begin to go up that list, we find that we could begin to serve the unmet needs of a larger number of households, culminating at the top, where those items, paved connectivity trails for bikes and pedestrians, would serve the greatest levels of unmet needs to the largest number of households in the community. And so that's the way that we like to interpret the charts as consultants. That's the way I know Confluence typically looks at this. But again, this is a blend of all sorts of other information that's been received that's going to really complement and add to this particular list. So this is not the only decision-making tool that anybody's using here. We can see some items like pickleball courts towards the middle, but it's pretty high rating at 91. And those are some of the nuanced items that everybody will be looking at in total, not just this red, blue, green breakdown. We did the same exact analysis for programming. What we really always keep our fingers crossed for is that the programming types blend in well with the facility need types. We did see a lot of that here. We had city-sponsored special events or performances kind of top the list there at 66%, but relative programming need tends to be smaller. We asked about the needs for programs and activities, and we see a lot larger levels of not met needs. But again, proportionately speaking, there are smaller groups of respondents saying that they have a need for those items. We rated the importance of those items in that forced ranking format. And again, kind of a commonality, esports down at the bottom. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't consider offering it in the future. It's just right now, very few respondents hold it in high regard in terms of importance and unmet needs. And here we do have a kind of a clear delineation line. At that 102 going down to 79, there's a pretty stark drop-off in the overall priority investment ratings. And what we found is water, fitness, educational classes, and really city-sponsored special events and nature programs and environmental education kind of top the list, and it blends well with some of our other facility amenity types. And so the priority investment ratings is an excellent tool. We use it all over the place, and we're using it for really large-scale communities in their budgeting survey, both in Cincinnati, San Antonio, Mecklenburg County, and a few other places. So you're in good hands with the analysis, and Hank and the team at Confluence really knows how to implement it into the decision-making process. One of the other things that we did that is really mostly found in our community surveys is our important satisfaction analysis. I've highlighted the items that are of our higher priority, or in terms of not need and unmet need and importance, but rather lower levels of satisfaction and higher levels of importance come out in this particular analysis. And so I've highlighted the items that are of our higher priorities for improvement. Down towards the bottom, we see some lower levels of satisfaction. Up towards the top, such as maintenance of parks and trails, we see relative high levels of satisfaction, but because the overall importance of those items is so high, it can truck those or can kind of tally on or really trailer on those items to this higher priority level. But what we see here is all of the items that I highlighted for the most part in the previous slide are our most important items in ascending order. The only one that's up there that wasn't a high priority item is overall quality of High Blue Community Center. We use this analysis for just about every metro municipality in terms of their community surveys, and really suggesting where we should put more service dollars, or really where we should address more service dollars and funding. And what we found is security in parks, but that's really probably a perceptions related issue that I have to imagine in the next few months or even a year from now would have maybe a different perception as the news media maybe changes their tune about safety in our communities. That's one that we fight with just about every place I go. It's not that your parks are unsafe, but there's this perceived notion that folks don't feel safe. And so there's something about having to combat that particular messaging that item does tend to be somewhat towards the top of this analysis. It was relatively low satisfaction, very high importance in terms of it being a well-rated item there. So it's our highest priority, but I did isolate it to try to let you all know I do not believe that your parks are unsafe. I believe it's a perception-related issue that we're seeing not only in Missouri, but in Texas and in California and on the East Coast, and I'm seeing it just about everywhere. The items that we have under that are another perception-related item, overall value received for taxes and fees. As I mentioned earlier, we asked this question in a different way earlier. We had much higher overall levels of satisfaction. When we came back to it, we found that respondents were a little bit more critical, and it now is one of those important items. So another perceptions-related issue, something that we can really begin to combat about how we put your tax dollars to use, overall value received for your taxes, what we're doing for the community can really go a long way there. But then what they're really telling us after that is that we need to continue to maintain our parks. We need to offer a variety of different parks in our city. We need to maintain our trails, and most importantly, or not most importantly, but very important as a part of some of these perception-related items, we need to focus on our communication and make sure we're providing the information where folks most need it. And so availability of information about programs and facilities can also lead to combating some of the perception-related items of our other top two issues. And so by making sure we're kind of honing in on those communication channels that are most effective, we can begin to kind of double up on our messaging in some of those places as well. One of the last things that we asked was we asked support for various actions. There was a forced-rank follow-up question. I highlighted the items that were the most important items, or which one of those actions are most important to households. It was really about improvements. This has been shifting nationally over the last few surveys I've done, but for the last couple of years, improvements have really superseded any kind of developments or expansions. But what I really like to see here is that the last one that I've highlighted with the arrow, renovate and expand your community center. There was interest in the programming and in the facility types for maybe more community center or more indoor use type. So more indoor space is what I was kind of reading into there. It's really the only item that you see something beyond the improve. It's a renovate and expand, but for the most part, folks in Belton would really like to see us maintain, improve what we've got before we go out and add an additional dog park or construct new outdoor pickleball courts and some of those actions towards the bottom of that list. I'll do my best to answer any questions that you might have. If not, I'll get Hank and Brian a written response back probably tomorrow morning.
Everybody good? Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful meeting. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys. All right, Councilman Liaison Report.
Everybody, I don't think there's a whole lot of things you'll be super interested in that have occurred recently from the City Council, but just a couple of quick things to note. The Senior Center kitchen is going to get an update for anybody interested in that. And the other kind of big piece is that we have officially passed the filing as well as the election date. So that is December 10th through December 31st will be the candidate filing for city elections, and then that election will take place on April 8th. So that's all I got.
Okay, thanks, Alex. City Manager Report.
Good evening. Yeah, I was asked to provide an update to the City of Belton's purchasing policy, at least as to what occurred at the City Council level. The City Council did approve an ordinance that amended the purchasing policy, that allowing the lowest level of purchasing authority, which is department head level purchasing authority, to be raised from $1,500 to $5,000. That action was taken essentially just to combat the increased and continued inflation that we've had over the past few years, and just to allow for consistent and routine purchases to be able to take place at the department level. And then other than that, there are a couple updates. The streets projects that are going on 58 And then on Mullen and Cambridge, those things are, both of those projects are within the last couple weeks at the very latest and should both be done, assuming the weather cooperates, before Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Joe. I do have one question. It's more on a personal side. The intersection by the fire department down there by the community center, what is that, Mullen and 163rd? Has there ever been a conversation about a stoplight there? Because there's an accident there right now as it's coming up here.
Yeah, we don't have one actively, we're not pursuing that currently. It's come up every once in a while. There are a few areas where we have intersections like that, and I mean, we're always looking at any possibilities.
Yeah, that's just a busy one, especially if
Sure.
71 or 49 gets shut down a little bit. Everybody comes off and tries to take that. So, thanks, Joe.
Yep.
Okay, director's report. You doing that, Brian?
Yep, can you hear me? I really don't have a whole lot to add. I know that staff is wrapping up our full-time evaluation process, which has been delayed a couple of weeks. Vanda, I know, has been overwhelmed with the LWCF grant, which was a priority, and I know that we just got that done last week, so kudos to Vanda and Kevin for the time they spent on putting that grant together. That grant is for an all-inclusive playground that we will see in our proposed capital this coming budget season. I'm out of town right now, New Orleans, with the rec staff. Athletic Business Conference starts tomorrow. Staff's working hard on budget, as we discussed last month. The minimum wage did pass, and so we're already starting to brainstorm on how we're going to overcome this. From the existing minimum wage to the new one, the first initial jump, it's about 11.7 jump. If we did an increase both to the minimum wage and compression, it's about $152,000 effect on our budget. And so we're starting to brainstorm on what we can do to try to overcome that effect. I understand we had a huge turnout for the holiday craft fair on Saturday. Kudos out to our special events manager, Kaylee. The High Blue is picking up. We anticipate higher traffic in the next 60 to 90 days due to the holiday season. Other than that, I'll field any questions from the group.
Any questions for Brian? Okay. Aquatics? Any questions there? Anything on High Blue? Okay. Marketing? And if there's anything you guys want to add, please do. All right. Parks and facilities? And recreation. Okay. That was pretty easy. All right, standing committee, finance?
I did want to call out here, Dr. Janet. Yeah, I did want to call out that there was an upgrade in the system that the city is using, so we haven't posted all of the monies to the October budget. It's rolling over into November, so there is a discrepancy there in a shortfall. So we'll see that kind of come through later. So I think, is it sales tax, Shanna, is still not posting? No, sorry, property tax is not posted for September and October. And then our accounting of the, what's our 50,000, I'm sorry. With the city hall where they upgraded the system, what's not falling through, it only went through to the 12th.
So nothing after October 12th had been posted yet, but it will be in November.
Yeah,
It'll catch up.
it'll catch up, but we're in a catch-up phase due to the transition of software.
Thank you. Recreation? Okay. Buildings and grounds? Okay, and then personnel did meet. I was not there, but they were in executive session the entire time, so there's nothing to discuss there. Any unfinished business? Any new business? Announcements? Well, we're gonna make this easy for me tonight. All right, I make a motion that we move into executive session to discuss matters pertaining to hiring, firing, disciplining, or promotion of personnel according to Missouri statute 610.0213, and individually identify all personnel records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to employees or applicants for employment according to Missouri statute 610.02113, and that the record be closed and the meeting adjourned from there.
So moved.
Okay. Adrian? We have to do a roll call. Zeb? Rusty? Jennifer?
Aye.
Dave?
Yes.
All right. Okay, we're in executive session.
Guys,
Thanks,
enjoy the
everybody.
rest of your evening.